we go.
All right, how does that seem?
That's good.
Okay,
That's good.
1, 2, 3, ready to go, huh? Hello, my name is Diane Ware, and I am a street photographer. What that means to me is that I like taking pictures of people who I do not know. Several years ago, I was given the opportunity to write about issues in street photography for FOTSI, which is the online educational arm of the website Lightstalking. The articles were a minimum of 1,600 words long, which, trust me, feels like a novella. At some point in time, I decided that I had said everything I know about street photography, maybe twice. It turned out, however, that I had a lot more to say about my favorite subject. For more than 2 years now, I have written a weekly street photography blog. To be honest, I am here today because of the blog. I have lots of thoughts about this photography genre that I would like to share with you. It is ironic that street photography is probably the most practiced genre of photography in our modern world of mobile camera devices, while simultaneously being one of the least understood in the general community and even in the community of photographers. Some of the issues that street photographers face are: many people question whether it is even legal. Our photography can be seen as invasive. On general photography critique sites, it can be hard for us to get a meaningful critique of our work because to some extent, the photography that we practice plays by different rules than the larger community. It is not likely that if we go to a general camera club meeting, we are going to find a lot of members who share our passion. Sort of as an aside, today, Jer Power, who is one of the administrators for Inspired Street Photography, which is a street photography group on Facebook, was commenting that he was working on his portfolio for the licentiate L-panel submission with the Irish Photographic Federation. Jer is mainly a street photographer, and he was unhappy because he really didn't feel he can put any street photography images in because he said, as far as he knew, no successful L-panel had ever contained an image of street photography. And good luck if you are a street photographer who dreams about being selected for the best pictures of the year on Flickr. For the last 3 years, at most one street photo made the Flickr top 25 list. This is not by way of complaint. It gives me a lot of opportunity to introduce people to my passion, and that is what I hope to do today. I will cover 4 topics, time permitting: the legality and ethics of street photography, the types of street photography, some similarities and differences between street photography and other genres, and what photographies in different genres can learn from each other. Along the way, I will introduce to you some of the splendid work by contemporary, often amateur street photographers. If it is okay, I would like to pause for questions at the end of each topic. Before we begin, I want you to know that I will be posting a document on the Snap Facebook page that provides links to the galleries of all of the photographers that have allowed me to use their photos in this talk today. Let's start with the issues with the legality and ethics of street photography. When my skeptical and sometimes worried children asked me, is it even legal? I could answer definitively yes. I took this picture of a child on a New York City subway. I did not ask permission, which was an entirely legal choice. In the United States and in most English-speaking countries, it is legal to take picture of anything or anyone on public property. On private property, owners have the right to prohibit or restrict photography. Of course, there are many nuances here. For example, can one take someone's picture who is on private property if you are standing on public property? The answer is yes, as long as there is no reasonable expectation of privacy. That is the key phrase, no reasonable expectation of privacy. I feel free to take someone's picture through a window, like this one that I took at NYU. Sometimes property that seems public is not public. Places like shopping malls and art galleries can be subject to restrictions imposed by the owners. Signs will generally be posted that list the restrictions. At some places, like public hospitals and courthouses, restrictions on photography are made, even though they are public buildings. Laws do vary by country. I have included a link in the references to a table in Wikimedia Commons that gives you information regarding the various laws in countries that apply when pictures of identifiable people are taken. I would like to tell you, though, that that table has not been updated for many years. Beyond the legal issues are the issues of street photography ethics. Some street photographers typically have an internal code of ethics, which can vary significantly from photographer to photographer. My own internal code includes, I absolutely do not take pictures of people on the fringes of society, including the homeless. This is best left to the photographers who spend time in the community in order to raise awareness and empathy. This picture, which I call Nope, is taken by Diane Bells. She has been a professional photographer for over 20 years. One of her specialties is documentary and street photography. She has extensively photographed people on the fringes of society, including the homeless, and also people with extreme political views. She constantly teaches me about their challenges and also their humanity. To continue with my code of ethics, I generally avoid taking pictures of children, which you might question in light of the fact that the first picture I posted was the picture of a child on the subway. I generally do not take pictures when it is culturally inappropriate. As an example, I probably would not take pictures of someone who is part of the Amish community. If someone asks me not to take a picture or to delete a picture, I do that. That rarely happens. It is more likely that someone will ask for a copy of the picture. When I was thinking about the requirement for street photographers to have internal ethics, I thought, that sure is not required in any other genre, but that is not the case. For example, bird photographers have to decide if using sounds or food to attract birds is an ethical practice. They have to make decisions about the appropriateness of taking pictures of nesting birds. I can remember discussions in the critique forum of light stalking about whether it was appropriate to remove telephone lines or other distractions from an architectural photo or even a landscape photo in order to keep the photo authentic. Travel photographers have to make the decision whether they will honor requests from churches, for example, to limit their photography. In the final analysis, in spite of illegal issues, ethical issues, or intrusion issues, I do consider street photography to be an important activity. It documents culture for historical purposes. We've all seen pictures, for example, of the Great Depression. It raises awareness of cultural issues such as economic status and cultural values. For me in particular, I use street photography to show that no matter who we are and where we are and what our station of life is, we are more alike than different. I want to beat back the concept of other. Oops. Now I'm in trouble. Okay. I've got to go here and go here and go here. Okay. It probably appears that I have very little in common with this lady from El Salvador. She makes pupusas, which is an affordable fast food meal in El Salvador. My life work was making Subway sandwiches, which is an affordable fast food meal in the United States. I can only hope that my customers felt as welcome as she makes her customers feel. What can you do with a street photograph? Just like you, I can post on social media. Unlike you, the person I did not know may find their picture. This happened with this post to Instagram. The carriage driver did not find the picture. It was a fellow driver who saw it. She liked it and wanted him to have a copy. I printed an 8x10 and mailed it to her. Besides posting on social media, street photographs can be sold to news outlets. They can be displayed and sold in galleries as fine art. They cannot be entered into some photo contests or sold for commercial purposes unless a model's release has been obtained. That even may not be enough. If the model has a prominent tattoo, that is copyrighted and requires a release. Also, if the background is street art or even the most common graffiti, that is copyrighted and requires a release. Copyright law forbids a user from posting content that violates the copyrights of another. As a technical issue, even posting this picture on Instagram could constitute a copyright infringement. However, it is a violation that is so trivial that the law will not impose legal consequences. Using this picture for commercial purposes, though, is an entirely different issue. In September of 2018, Nashville street artist Jason Woodside brought a suit against Christian singer Holland and her record label and video production company because of the unauthorized use of one of his street murals. Copyright issues crop up in other genres of photography. You have to have permission to share, sell, or publish photos or videos of the Eiffel Tower taken at night, although there has not been a court case on that. The same is true for the Louvre and also the Rome train station. When Hudson Yards, a building complex in New York City, was opened last year, the original policy was that the owners had copyrights to all photographs taken of the building. When there was a public outcry, they amended that policy so that they no longer own the copyright, but they can use any picture of their building posted on social media for their own purposes. I'm at the end of the first section of this talk on the legality and ethics of street photography. Does anybody have any comments or questions on this? All right, let's move to the types of street photography. And we're going to begin with candid street photography. Street photographers like to mix it up with each other on a variety of issues, starting with the types of street photography. There is definitely no agreement within the community exactly what the types are. Today, I'm going to talk about 5 types that I recognize. In each case, I will give you the characteristics of the type, the name, or at least the name of at least one well-known photographer who shoots that type, how that type might serve as an entry point for photographers in other genres, and how you might get started. There is one type of street photography the whole community agrees on, and that is candid street photography. It captures the day-by-day lives of people in their daily surroundings. It is candid photography, that is, people are unaware of the presence of the photographer. Another way to put this is the pictures are not posed. It tends toward being documentary or journalistic. There is a balance between the people, the environment, the story, and the feeling. It was traditionally shot with a focal length of 35 millimeters to 50 millimeters. The most famous candid street photographer was, of course, Henri Cartier-Bresson. Candid street photography is an easy entry point for street photography for all photographers because we all own mobile devices with cameras. Our phone cameras are the perfect starter devices for this type of photography. They are inconspicuous, always with us, and they have focal lengths which vary by brand and model of about 30 millimeters, which is a classic street photography focal length. The truth of the matter is, a mobile phone is all you will ever need to produce stunning street photography images. This picture was taken in a city council meeting in Louisiana. It might not have been legal to take it, but I truly practiced stealth candid photography that day using my iPhone. If you want to try at your hand at candid street photography, there are a couple of ways to be stealth. First and foremost, turn your camera on to shoot silent. An easy start is to take pictures from behind people, although I have more reservations about this piece of advice than I did a year ago when I gave this talk. In December, I was named administrator of Inspired Street Photography, a large group on Facebook. I look at every post every day, about 1,400 per week. Most of the week ones, and there are many, are shots taken from the back. At the same time, I have honored 3 back shots by putting them into our gallery. I took this picture from behind, not because I am a shy street photographer, but because I could not overtake her to get a picture from the front. Almost all street photographers have 1 or more pictures taken from the back. You can also take pictures in crowds. This picture was taken at a Mayan village festival in Guatemala. It was part of a short series that I posted. You can take a big touristy kind of photo that includes people. This was the Gay Pride Parade in Nashville. As you might imagine, if you have taken a picture of people in a public setting, it does not necessarily mean that it is a compelling picture. If you go out to take candid street photography, look for interesting scenes. Henri Cartier-Bresson used juxtaposition, that is, employing compositional contrast like young versus old, large versus small, or anything that your viewer will perceive as opposites. In this picture, I see people going in different directions. They are perhaps of different generations, and for sure they wear different clothing. Because of their proximity, I connect these 2 people in my mind. That makes the contrast even more interesting. Also compelling are pictures that have compositional connection, such as repetition of color, people being spread out evenly, or any group of things that the viewer will see as similar. I see similar ages and dress, and most important, similar selfie-taking behavior here. Photos that show a universal expression, such as pleasure, surprise, or distress, tend to be more interesting. This is a popular picture, I think, because it shows joy, and also because it has a good ground to figure relationship, which means the subjects are separated from each other and also from the background. Composition counts a lot in street photography, so the more familiar you are with the principles of photographic composition, such as the use of the rule of thirds, leading lines, primary diagonals, or figure to ground separation, the better chance you have to produce a good candid street photo. This is the end of what I have to say about candid street photography. Does anybody have any comments or questions about that?
I have one comment because I've done a lot of street photography and I've had people ask me, how did you not be noticed while you were taking these photos? And my comment always was, be older, be short, and wear beige, because people won't pay any attention to you. You know, don't wear anything outlandish, and just kind of blend in with the crowd. So I think that that's great advice that you have about just trying to capture the moment and not be noticed while it's happening.
I listened to the podcasts, The Candid Frame, and Ibarionex interviewed Patrick Brown, who is a documentary photographer. Is anybody familiar with his work? I think it's probably very touching work. And so he decided that he was going to document the killing of animals for parts like rhino horns. Now, this is pretty big business and people aren't too interested in being documented on that. And he wasn't getting very much access. He found that if he dressed like a garish tourist, that was his way to get access, because they could not imagine that he was a serious photographer. So I think probably you can take a lot of strategies on that. I had a photography teacher, Vineet Vorha, who's well known, and he puts his camera to his eye. And while I was taking his workshop, I did that too. And I'm going to tell you something, it doesn't bother people at all. So I think we worry about the issue more than the issue is a real issue.
I have a question. Yeah, I have a question. Just, it relates to the last section also. So if I'm clear on this, you really could not legally sell this photo without a release from the woman.
That's not completely true. I could sell it to you to put up in your house, or I could sell it to you to put up in your business, but I cannot sell it to Pepsi or Coca-Cola.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, so you can sell it as fine art. You can put it in a book. You can sell it to newspapers, but you cannot sell it for its use for commercial purposes.
Oh, that's an interesting.
You can also use it in galleries, is that not correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
You can put it in a gallery as a...
Absolutely, yes, as fine art, yes. Fine art.
I was going to ask the question about what is the market generally for street photography?
Zero.
No, we just heard that Stacy just sold 4.
Okay.
Right in Nashville.
That is nothing short of a miracle. Certainly well-known photographers are going to have a market.
Yeah, one is a photograph I took in a cafe in Florence. Okay. Another is a group of kids running in Lucca. And 2 are the same photo, which was at a dance rehearsal. And so they've all sold as art pieces through the gallery. And, you know, so I'm thankful that people found the appeal in it. They're all black and white, and they're all, you know, very, you know, kind of classic looking. But yes, I'm finding that there is a market.
Diana, I, for example, have pictures of elderly people. And
Diane, you had another question.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question about, so you're saying a picture like this, and you could put in a book and call it Diane's Greatest Hits, and that would be legal.
That's correct.
And you, but also, which I have published a book on my humor that has a lot of pictures, but one of my most successful shows was a show I did on addictions. And I took a black and white picture, and then I put a haiku insight about what it was like to be an addict or love an addict. And I always felt that that was crossing the line. So if I had this picture in Keith's Greatest Hits, she might not object, but if I have her showing up as a heroin addict in a photo story, she might. So would you say that's crossing the line?
Well, there was a really quite a famous case in New York City. A well-known photographer, and I do not know who it is, took a picture of a Hasidic Jew, and this went into a gallery, and that man, you know, his religious denomination doesn't go for pictures, sued. In the end, it was allowed to stay in the gallery, but there were some kind of interesting restrictions. It was because, number one, it was a numbered print. And let me think of the other, by an artist who is well known. And so the point I'm trying to make is that maybe I could put this picture into a gallery and she found it, and she could successfully sue me because it's not, you know, perhaps it wouldn't be a numbered print, and I'm certainly not a well-known photographer. So there are some cases that make this a little less clear.
Well, I have a friend who's in publishing, and he said, it sort of doesn't really matter that you could win in court. You don't want to be in court anyway.
Yes.
That's right. And about subject releases, I want to say that I was tickled to have a print in a show at the Frist, and Connect and Disconnect. Deshaun had one, Joe, I think John wrote, or a bunch of us did, but mine had an identifiable person, and they were not going to let this be it could be in the show, but they were doing a book related to the show, and they were not going to put it in the book unless I could get her release. And she was just a stranger in the crowd, but luckily Nashville's a small city, and through the networks, I was able to find her, have coffee with her, get her to sign something, and get my photo in the book. But that was interesting, Diane. That's along your lines of it could be in the gallery. It just couldn't be print. Legally, they could have done it, but the Frists, they
didn't want to bother with the issue if it was.
Right. There you go.
I think you have to be worried a little bit about this new bill out there. If you're a street photographer, you better call your state senator or your state rep and tell them to, you know, put that on the back burner, or we could all be not taking photos of people.
No, that's very specific though to photos that are inappropriate, especially of women. That maybe it's not about all people. I beg to differ with that.
Well, the only reason I say that is that, as the Supreme Court once said, you know, I know pornography when I see it. Okay, when you're in court, what is inappropriate and what is not inappropriate is always up for discussion. And I would tell you that bill better be tabled, or a lot of us are going to have problems.
Well, I beg to disagree, but I interpreted more as about people wandering around taking upskirt photos or things like that that are definitely inappropriate. So anyway, but I'll take a look at the bill a little more closely.
Are we ready to go? Okay. The next topic is street portraiture. Street portraiture is another straightforward type of street photography, although goodness knows there can be a hotbed of debate about whether the posed branch of this type really qualifies as street or its own genre. I think history is on the yes side of this question. Street portraiture has these characteristics. It can be shot candidly, as this woman was in a Guatemalan market, or not candidly. I asked to take this picture of mom and her child in the same market. It focuses on the person more than the environment, although the environment can be used to give insight into the person. It often conveys feelings. Whoops. Let me see. Let me just check and see if I missed one. It often conveys feelings. Let's see where I am. This was taken in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and honestly, it's an entire country that's in PTSD. And also the face is in focus. This picture, which I call Holy Festival, was taken by Synod Malula. Sy is a top-notch general photographer and videographer in Nashville, who you all, of course, know as a member of SNAP. There are so many great portraitists, Diane Arbus, 1923 to 1971, whose photos were often not candid, was noted for her portraits of marginalized people in our society. Vivian Mayer, 1926 to 2009, is an inspirational amateur street photographer whose pictures, including many street portraits, were unknown and unpublished in her lifetime. Street portraiture was an inadvertent entry point into street photography for me. It started on one of my first trips. I went to India with the hope of taking pictures of iconic sites like the Taj Mahal without the messy distraction of people. That is not going to happen in India. My travel company specializes in offering cultural opportunities, and as a bonus, they do the hard work of securing permission for photography. When I looked back at my travel pictures, I realized I had a large collection of street portraits. I'm so good at this. All right, let's try again. Please. We had gotten to this statue early in the morning, and finally there were no tourists, but there were people working. I think this is when I gave up trying to not have people in my pictures in India. I now think that this picture is so much more interesting because of the person that is in it. Travel makes street portraiture in general a good entry point for street photography. Cultures are so different that you're inspired to take pictures. Also, your inclination for boldness is heightened, perhaps because it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Street portraiture is also an entry point for photographers who are comfortable with using long lenses and simultaneously not comfortable with intruding on people. While it is not particularly common for street photographers to use a long lens, my friend John Carnahan does. He is a prolific street portraiture photographer. This picture, which I call Bicycle Beauty, was taken by John. I asked him for the exit of this photo. He uses a Canon EOS 5DS with an E5 400mm f2.8 IS2 lens. What a powerhouse camera that is. The ISO is 100, the aperture is f5, and the shutter speed is 1/800th of a second. Wow. That's all of my comments on street portraiture. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that?
That's a beautiful image, this one. Well, they all have been
all of his are. He just takes absolutely beautiful pictures.
Well, this one, you look at it and you just go, wow.
I know. I will say, though, it hasn't completely saved him from having people be unhappy. He definitely has gotten in conflict with people, say in Washington Square, not by the person whose picture he was taken, but by bystanders who actually often are the ones that get upset rather than the person whose picture is being taken. That's almost always the case.
Why would a bystander be upset?
They're just some people that have thoughts about things, and they also are inclined to act on that.
Well, I guess that's very true.
Yeah, I had a situation in London where I was in the Victoria and Albert Museum, and they have a garden in the middle of the museum with a pond, and there were kids playing in the pond, and I was getting some pictures of the kids in these joyful, you know, playing in the water and all this, and some people went over to the parents and started telling them I was taking pictures of their kids. And so I saw this happening. So I went over to the parents and I showed them the pictures of the kids in black and white, you know, showing them that these are art photos. And they said, oh, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
So it was a bystander that was creating an issue that the parents wouldn't have had.
I had a situation in Paris one time at the Luxembourg Gardens where they have a play area. And it wasn't a bystander, it was the mom. I was just snapping pictures and she saw me taking pictures of her children and I guess others. And boy, she chased me out of there and I left because she was not having it at all. Which you gotta, I mean, you have to respect that. There's no reason to fight about it, but she was concerned that it was not a good thing.
I had the same thing happen. I was also in Paris at a different, smaller park, and I was sort of taking pictures, and one of the nannies came up and she said, it is illegal in France for you to take pictures of these school kids to protect the rights of the parents. Now, that's what she told me. I mean, but it was a similar...
you got a nicer response than I did. She just like chased me away. But I understand that being a mother, would have handled it differently, but I understand her concern.
France has some of the most restrictive policies on taking pictures of people that you don't know of any country in the world. And yet I know there's a lot of French street photographers. I think that it is even the case that if you take a picture of a crowd, like that picture that I showed you of Nashville Gay Pride, any one of those individuals could object to that.
I've taken a lot of street photography in Paris when I've been there, and that was the only time I ever had an issue. And of course it was with a child, but I didn't know that about France, but it's good to know.
Yes, generally speaking, it's not a bad idea to read up on the particular laws of the country.
Yes.
And this Wikimedia Commons that I'm going to send a link for on Snap does give some basic information about what each country's laws are. But there have been no court cases about this, even though it's been a matter of law for a long time. So clearly they're not acting on it or codifying it too much, but they could because it is on the books.
Since you mentioned equipment, what is the future of street photography? Is it mirrorless, is it miniatures, or is it phone cameras?
I personally think it's going to be phone cameras. But there will always be people that take mirrorless. I mean, it's just going to, maybe it's just going to be Leica. I don't know. That's kind of the trend that I'm seeing. Small cameras. And I have seen street photography that is as beautiful as any camera ever takes. With a mobile device, maybe not an iPhone. I tend to think that the Androids do a little bit better, but iPhone is getting better.
The picture that my background is made from was shot with a Android phone.
Okay. Shall I go on to geometric street photography? In geometric street photography, patterns, textures, shapes, lines, tones, color, and light are all used to give a visual experience. There is little reportage or documentation of events. It is a pleasing combination of people and objects, but the people or parts of people are not usually the main subject. The emphasis is on the environment.
Ooh.
Isn't that beautiful? This picture, which I call Man in Red, was taken by Miriam Carrasco. Miriam is a street photographer who specializes in geometric street photography. I find her work compelling. This type of photography rarely tells a story, but it can pique feelings. For example, feelings of loneliness or solitude. The undisputed master of geometric street photography was Henri Cartier-Bresson. One way to take this kind of photograph is to find an interesting building, staircase, door, or anything architectural, study where you will get the most dramatic light, and then wait for the person to show up there. In this type of street photography, the setup typically takes some amount of time. You may have to wait a long time for the right person to walk into the frame. The person is not the focus. They can be included sometimes just for a sense of scale, as in this picture that was taken in Houston. You can also look for lines, shadows, bands of color, or the repetition of shapes, and again, wait for a person to enter. Timing matters when you want to use shadows. This was taken in late fall at the Country Western Hall of Fame at 2 p.m. in Nashville. Earlier in the day, there were no shadows at all. Geometric street photography is a great entry point for anyone interested in architectural photography. Also, if you are a STEMS type, science, technology, mathematics, and engineering, you will likely find this type of street photography to be the most comfortable place to start. Ironically, it is also a good fit for artistic types as well, because the hallmark of this type of photography is good design. It is not the type of street photography that requires stealth, but rather a good eye for composition. That's all I have to say about geometric street photography. Does anybody want to make any comments about that?
Diane, when you don't give us a name of a photographer, does that mean you took the photo?
That is correct.
Like this one, I can't even imagine that being the Country Music Hall of Fame.
It may not be. To be honest, I'm not. It's on that street. It's right by, I thought it was the guitar place. It's not the, the place that has the big guitar. It's not that. So it must be. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it is. It is the Country Music Hall of Fame.
Good. I was a little worried about that. I tried to, I'm pretty much just taking pictures, not painting.
That's a great one though, all those shadows. Wow.
It's like that every day at 2 p.m.
You got to find a parking place.
Oh, well, I have a secret for that. No, I'll share my secret. You should absolutely park in public square parking on the weekends. It's $5. On Sunday, it's free, as long as there's no, it's $15 if there's an event going on like Predators or the Titans. And you just walk down 2nd Avenue and you're on Broadway. And if you walk a little bit farther, you're at the Country Music Hall of Fame. It's really a great place to park.
Good to know. Thank you.
Or you could take the bus.
Well, that they used to have the free bus, but there's no free bus anymore.
Or not.
Yeah, I just found it easy. I've done it a couple of times. It's just want to go downtown, but don't want to pay big money for parking. I just took the bus and, got tickets for both ways back, there and back, and walked around and just hopped on another bus to go home.
Well, right now, public.
Not where I live, that would not work.
Yeah, it's a little difficult from Oak Hill.
Yeah.
So,
or Westmead.
All right, shall I move on to abstract street photography? Abstract street photography uses reflections, blurs, shadows, and colors to give a feeling for an event rather than to record the event. In this regard, it is the opposite of candid street photography, whose purpose is to record a moment in time. The master of abstract street photography was Saul Leiter. His compositions often had a painterly look to them. Perhaps it is not surprising that he started out as an artist. He used many techniques to give his images the abstract feeling. For example, he shot through small openings, which created negative space. He liked to shoot in bad weather, which sometimes resulted in minimalist-ish images. He took pictures of reflections, which created distortions. He used depth of field in non-traditional ways, sometimes bringing out strong colors in blurred objects. Some of his pictures had a collage effect, particularly the pictures that included signs, because he rather famously used a 150 millimeter lens, which has a flattening effect. Like geometric street photography, abstract street photography is generally less intrusive. So if you are a shy photographer, this may be the type of street photography that suits you. If you want to try abstract street photography, here are some opportunities to look for. Shoot through building or car windows that are dirty, foggy, or covered with raindrops. The objects that are closest to the window will be the most in focus. An example that I particularly like is this picture by Neil Godwin, which I call Man in a Window. I find it to be the ultimate mysterious picture. Look for architectural glass block, which can vary in color, size, and form. They can be used in windows, walls, floors, or skylight. This picture was taken in the Frist. All sorts of surfaces can be reflective, including windows, polished floors, and my favorite, street puddles. This picture was taken of a reflecting pool in Nashville. Use motion. Yes,
We've lost your screen. We've lost your screen.
You've lost my screen.
Yeah.
I have it. We got it.
You got it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. I thought
Good.
Never mind.
That's good. That's real good. Use motion to blur objects. Oops, I did it. Sometimes it goes too fast for me. This picture, which I call Man Walking at Night, was taken by New York City photographer Ron Giacconi. Aside from street photography, Ron takes pictures of what I would call iconic neighborhood businesses throughout New York City. As an example, the diner that was made famous by the series Friends, which, by the way, is no longer in existence. This is the case for many of the businesses that Ron has photographed. I feel his work will be recognized someday as a true historical treasure. Use shadows. Shoot during the golden hour. The low angle of the sun causes long shadows. Create mystery by partially hiding a subject in shadows. Make your shadow the main subject. This picture was taken by Janie Claiborne, who is truly an amateur photographer, which I call Ryman Shadows. It is a lovely abstract shadow of Maggie Rogers taken at the Ryman Auditorium. That's all I have to say about abstract street photography. Does anybody have any questions or comments about that? Then let's go on. I'm not through. I have one more section. I'm sorry. Take pictures with silhouettes. Silhouettes can create drama and mystery because they leave a lot to the imagination. This picture, which I call Man with a Notepad, was taken by Miami photographer Carlos Antonorsi. He is a master at silhouette photography. Now we're at the end of abstract street photography. If there's no comments or questions, I will move on to intrusive street photography. I saved the best for last, the type of photography that is called intrusive. It is almost hard for me to talk about intrusive street photography. I have a very hard time relating to pictures taken by Bruce Gilden, who is the most famous intrusive street photographer. The one time I was subject of intrusive street photography, it made me very uncomfortable. The last thing in the world I want to do is intrude with my camera, but the bottom line is, the nature of street photography is intrusion. It is easier not to think about that. Finally, I fancy that I have no intrusive photos to show you, but I do. Perhaps they are not textbook intrusive photography, but intrusive nevertheless. I'm fairly certain that I intruded on this group of people on Easter Island. Aside from the man's definitive hand sign, the woman on the left has what I call the really stare. Intrusive street photography is literally in-your-face photography. The photographer takes a close-up picture of the subject with a flash in the hopes of capturing a reaction. I mentioned I was a subject, in a manner of speaking, of an intrusive photo. I was in New York City, in the street between two cars, taking pictures of people walking by a painted sign. Nobody seemed particularly bothered by me taking the pictures, even though I was there for a good bit. Finally, the right person walked through, and I came out between the two cars. At that time, a man came up to me, put a camera into my face, and said, "I saw what you were doing," and took a picture of me. This was the picture that I was photographing.
Oh my goodness.
As a side note, I was very drawn to this picture, but perplexed about why it would portray a camel walking in New York City. Well, that is Ted. He is the star attraction, perhaps the star of the Rockettes Christmas Spectacular show for the last 20 years. About the time I made the decision to write the blog on intrusive street photography, which was actually not an easy decision. 3 things happened that helped me not only make peace with this type of street photography, but even come to enjoy it. First, I watched a vlog by Spyros Papaspyropoulos. His blog, Street Hunters, is a blog I like to read. Spyros took a 30-minute video of his first experience as an intrusive photographer. It was taken at a Mardi Gras event, which is actually a very doable starting point. People responded very well. Spyros has continued to take intrusive photography. I then came across Adam Miller on Instagram. He is a professional photographer in New York City who does gorgeous cityscapes. He also does intrusive street photography that is equally gorgeous. He is a young ex-military guy. He is as cute as he can be, and I can picture that no one minds him intruding. Mm. My last bit of good luck was when the public Facebook group Street Photography Challenge chose Candid Flash, which was Number Candid Flash, as a weekly challenge. I really got to see a wonderful collection of classic intrusion street photography. It also led me to Irina Escaferi, who posted this compelling picture, which I call Squiggles, as an entry. Irina is an incredibly generous photographer. She has allowed me to use some of her helpful advice about taking flash photographs in my blog, and also gave me permission to use her street photography pictures. In addition to being a street photographer, Irina owns Barking Tales Dog Photography and specializes in taking pictures of shelter dogs. Here are some of the suggestions that Irina gave me on how to get started in flash street photography. Irina says, I practice flash photography quite a while now. It takes a lot of experimentation. Some tips. Use the widest lens because you want to show a nice background. Be bold and don't engage in arguments and conversations with people. Go to the most crowded places because people are most distracted and don't pay too much attention to your flash in front of their noses. I will tell you that I began to think I might give intrusive street photography a try with my iPhone in a crowd. Now, this does not work at all because the iPhone flashes a focus beam that seems to last forever before the actual flash. That's all I have to say about intrusive street photography. Does anybody else want to make comments on that? Has anybody ever done that?
I haven't done it with flash, but I'll tell you a funny story. I was walking on a side street in Washington, D.C. near DuPont Circle. It was late afternoon and I heard a party up above me. And I looked up and it was a bunch of guys on a balcony having a party. It was beautiful lighting. And I leaned back to take some pictures and one of them spotted me and yelled out, oh, look, he's taking pictures. Let's all pose. And they posed for me and I got this incredible photo of them that ended up in a show that I had. And it was one of those moments where when I heard him say, oh, look, he's taking pictures, I thought, oh God, I'm sunk. These guys are gonna come down and beat the crap out of me. And yet they were all, you know, they just enjoyed the moment themselves. So you just never know.
I have been going into Nashville every Saturday onto Broadway since November. And so I guess you could say I'm a regular, and it's small space, 5 blocks. So I'm getting to know the other regulars. And a lot of people ask me to take their picture. A lot of homeless people do. The other day, the Cat Lives Matter guy had me take care of his cats while he went to get cat food. I wish you could have seen the expressions of people that walked by trying to figure out who I was relative to those cats.
Yeah, I had an experience up on Church Street and 5th or so, somewhere up there. I was walking past this guy who had a mask on, and he saw me with the camera, and he said, if you give me enough money for a pizza, I'll let you take my picture. And so I said, how much is the pizza? And he said, $8.50. And I said, it's a deal. and he took his mask down, and I ended up getting this great shot of him. And I gave him $20, and I said, it's completely worth it. Go get 2 pizzas.
Okay.
It was very funny.
All right, let's move on to the similarities and differences between street photography and other genres. Unlike probably most other genres, street photographers like rain. There is nothing more helpful than the reflections on wet streets and sidewalks. The picture of a person walking down a street can be rather ordinary, but it can be transformed into artistic by the creative use of reflections from the street on a rainy day. In addition, reflected light is a diffused light source. On rainy days, the street photographer gets to use the same tool of diffused light that portrait photographers use all of the time. This was taken in Paris. I will say that I like light rain better than torrential rain. If it is raining too hard, it can be really hard to keep my lens clear of raindrops. If raindrops bring a drop in temperature, lens fog can be a problem, although I have found just by removing the UV filter that often fixes the problem. Also, unlike most other genres, proper focus is not the most important considerations. By any standard, this is a flawed photo. Do I wish that it was in focus and there was no blown out area? I do indeed, but I can accept it. And I have found that other street photographers can accept it because of the story. While the rest of the photography world is looking for a low ISO, street photographers are pretty okay with a comparatively high ISO. To be honest, I rarely go below ISO 400. I typically do not shoot in midday. I am shooting in an urban area, often into shadows. I usually use focal lengths of f5.6 to f13, which restrict light. And I have to have a shutter speed of at the very minimum 1/250th of a second. The only way to make that work is a high ISO. I typically do not take nighttime street photography. I would like to, but I'm a bit cowardly about going out at night by myself. However, just before my trip to Panama, I read a blog by Eric Kim, who gave me permission to use ISO 3200. This is not the best street photo in the world, but it was a breakthrough for me when I realized that my camera can do just fine with an ISO 3200. Often at the end of the day, when I'm shooting on Broadway, I'm definitely using ISO 3200. Street photographers, I think more than most photographers, are typically equipment minimalists. We never use tripods. We carry small cameras and lenses. The small cameras sometimes take small files. My camera is an Olympus mirrorless 4/3. I was really proud when I bought the new body that took a 20 megapixel file instead of a 16 megapixel file. My iPhone can take a 12 megapixel file. Many street photographers use a single prime lens. Since I do travel photography, I use a zoom with an effective focal length of 24 millimeters to 80 millimeters. And then there is the issue of using zone focusing, which really sets street photographers apart. Some of the best street photographers use manual focus with the goal of zone focusing. They typically shoot wide with a focal length of 28 millimeters. They use an f-stop of f11 to f13 so that there is reasonably good depth of field. They set a focal distance of 5 to 10 feet and then wait for people to walk into the scene. Sometimes they hold their cameras at their hips or to their chest to be truly stealth. I have known for a while that I should probably start using zone focusing. I began to practice with my iPhone, which of course does not have manual focus, but it does have a 30 millimeter focal length. So it was perfect practice for getting photos when the subject was at a close distance. I would take the phone not looking at the screen. In the beginning, I cut off a lot of heads. I'm gradually getting better. It is a totally stealth way to take a photo. My practice on the iPhone was just in the nick of time. I took my first ever street photography workshop in December of 2019 at the Miami Street Photography Festival. I had to move from an 80mm focal length to a 28mm focal length and use zone focusing instead of a live screen. What a challenge and impending disaster that was. On day 3, the last day of shooting in the workshop, somehow I pulled myself together. This picture was taken at the right distance from the subject. That is, I did not cut off heads or feet or bicycle tires. It was properly timed, and the shutter speed was sufficiently fast to catch the motion. There is compositional strength because there is a repetition of 3 bicycles. There is sufficient figure-to-ground separation, which means my figures, for the most part, did not overlap, and you can differentiate the figures from the background. The image has layers. There is a street mural back in the background, but there is a story in the images beyond the street mural. The punctum, that little surprise in a picture, are the eyes on the street mural apparently looking at one of the subjects. All I can say is that street photography is not for sissies. There are a lot of balls to keep in the air. To continue with the differences between street photography and other genres, more than most, we choose black and white. The one thing that we all share is the only way we can get better at our craft is to practice. And that's all I have to say about that topic. Does anybody have any questions? Let's move on to what we can learn from each other. One of my favorite websites is Improved Photography, and one of my favorite photographers is Jim Harmon, a landscape photographer and also the developer of the website. Jim was interviewed by Ibarionex on The Candid Frame. Ibarionex asked him why Improved Photography was a general photography site instead of a landscape photography site. Jim answered, "Getting really broad with your knowledge can help you in the one area you want to go down." He graphically represents that with the T model of photography. In general, photographers should be familiar with a wide variety of genres that are represented by the top of the T. And then they can drill down into their specialty, which is represented by the vertical line of the T. I subscribe to this model. Street photography overlaps with many genres: travel photography, portrait photography, family photography, architectural photography, event photography, and protest photography. Here's what I can learn from you. The architectural photographers remind me to take detail shots. The sports and event photographers help me to learn to capture motion. The macro photographers push me to become an expert in focusing. The portrait photographers help me to understand how various kinds of lighting affect the photography of human faces and bodies. They give me a sense of what constitutes strong placement for groups of people. Maybe most of all, they teach me how to crop bodies in post-processing. This street portrait, which I call Red, is by Vicki Wyndham, a friend of mine in New York City. It is cropped in a compelling way that I believe is consistent with the way a competent portrait photographer would crop. Vicki is particularly good at seeing and capturing juxtaposition. The landscape photographers help me learn the principles of layering a scene. I'm actually not very experienced in layering, and so I only had 2 pictures, and I've already shown you one, and this is the other one. The bird photographers teach me patience. I had to be very patient to get this walk by. What you can learn from me: tell a story. Take a landscape picture that confers a feeling. This was taken by an iPhone. I am no landscape photographer, but I actually mentally went through the checklist of things that I like in a landscape to get this picture that confers a lot of feeling for me. Take a bird picture that shows behavior. So this is just a puff picture. My first and continuing love is bird photography. I'm not particularly skilled at it. I never get birds in flight, even when everyone else does. But by golly, I got this blue-footed booby diving for dinner. Add a person. I wanted to get a different take on the painted buildings in Bergen, Norway. Street photographers are the free spirits of photography. I encourage you to try it. There is a certain thrill in the practice. And that's the end. Does anybody have any comments or questions about it?
Thank you, really wonderful.
If there are no more comments, then as we used to say in Subway, it's a wrap.
No, that was great. I do have a question because I tried to join the Inspired Street Photography Facebook page.
And you didn't get in.
And it gave me some message like media that is no longer available or something like that. Ooh. So maybe I should try it with a different computer, but do you have any advice as the best way? Because I would like to join that page.
Okay, I actually do have some advice. What I suggest you do is go to Facebook and then search for Inspired Street Photography. And you'll actually be able to see everything that's, see the posts, see what's going on there. I don't exactly remember how to become a member, but one of the things that's going to happen is there's going to be a short questionnaire that you have to answer. Do you have a Facebook page that is representative of your work in street photography?
Well, I have an Instagram page.
Is that Instagram page referenced in your Facebook page?
It may not be, but I can easily do that.
Okay, I have a better plan.
Okay.
Why don't I just invite you to membership? Because that will work. A lot of my friends are Instagram photographers. They don't have Facebook posts. It's not connected to Instagram. And not only do you not get to be a member, but you also get blocked from the site, which in some cases, all they wanted to do was see things on the site, which they could do anyway. But I do recommend, there's lots of interesting things going on that site.
Yeah, and I belong to the Snap Facebook page and have posted some things there. And I think Emily could vouch for me.
Oh, I absolutely believe you. So now we just have to get connected to each other.
So Diane, hang on just a second. If you want to stop your share screen, then we can see everything.
Yeah.
There we go. Ooh.
Yeah. Okay. So I just have to know how to connect, because what I'm going to do is make Stacy my friend, and then we're going to go from there.
Yes, that's probably the best way.
I have a better plan. My name is Diane Wehr, like Wehr, W-E-H-R.
Right.
You asked me to be a friend.
On Facebook, because I am following you on Instagram.
Okay, but I'm not on Instagram at all anymore.
Okay.
This administrator of the group takes a lot of my time.
Okay, so all right, one way or the other. And maybe if there's a problem, I can get your email address from Emily.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
But I can also tell you right now, and it's actually kind of simple. I owned Subway restaurants in Alabama. So my email address is alsubway@gmail.com. I was originally subway@mindspring.com. I was such an early owner that was actually possible. But eventually I wanted a Gmail address. So it's alsubway@gmail.com. And my last name is spelled W-E-H-R.
Yeah, that I so.
And when you connect with me, just give me, your name. Anybody that wants to do this, absolutely. This is the way I think it's the best way to do it, to just let me invite you. There is incredible work on that site. There's also poor work, of course.
And the other one you mentioned was Street Photography Challenge.
Oh, that is fun. That'll be easy to join.
Okay.
And they have 2 challenges every week. One of them is their main challenge. You can submit 2 color, 2 black and white. And then the weekend challenge, you can submit 2, your choice, color or black and white. I think there's still that restriction. And it is tremendously fun to participate in that. And the photographs are absolutely incredible. I judged the challenge faceless, and it was just so much fun. So many truly excellent photos. I encourage you to do that. It's just lots of fun. Emily, have you ever entered one in the Street Photography Challenge?
Oh, I think I did. And I am glad to be reminded of it. Again, I've gotten away from that. Yeah, good stuff. So that was wonderful. Good overview, Diane, and a good glimpse into the things that you're involved in that we can follow up on. So,
yes, thank you.
Thanks so much.
And I'm glad you're a member of SNAP. I'm going to say too. This will be fun. We can continue this conversation forward.
Thank you.
And we have a lot of street photographers. Only a few of them have spoken up tonight, but there's a lot of them out there in SNAP.
This talk was for a North Carolina camera club. And if you go to a regular camera club, it had 200 members. And it was a very good camera club. I knew with absolute dead certainty that there would not be a single member that was a street photographer in that group. And so when I gave the talk, I guess there were maybe 80 to 100 people there. I asked if there was anybody, and there actually was one, and that was his first night ever coming, and he came because a street photographer was going to talk. But they have really been vibrant about trying this. They had a workshop that one member went out and studied how to do street photography that he'd not done before and led the workshop. And the other day I was a part of a small group that meets every week and critiques photographs because it was going to be Street Photography Week. So my talk was more directed toward people that are beginners.
I'm trying to get it straight how that this might bleed over into other types of photography. I've done some street photography, but it's not been very much or not centered to what I do. Obviously, I do weird things, as my background shows. But how I'm just still trying to acclimate how this bleeds over into other types.
Well, for example, if you're interested in weird things, some of the most weird things that I see are reflections in street puddles. And so what I frankly recommend is that as you are out and about, look to see if there's water in streets. And if you get a picture of a person there, that's going to very likely be an interesting, abstract, different kind of picture.
Now, I've done quite a bit of window photography, reflections in windows. In fact, the one I had at the Frist was a reflection of downtown in a window.
Well, there you are. So the only thing that you would need to make it street photography is a person to actually be in that window.
But as you said earlier, Diane, there's all kinds of controversy about where the cutting line is on street photography, how inclusive it is. And so honestly, some say you don't even have to have a person in the photo, right?
Absolutely. And I'm generally very open about that kind of inclusiveness, and yet we are facing a particular issue on inspired street photography. We have a member who's a good member and a good photographer, but he likes to do some of his street photography at porn fairs, pornography fairs.
Oh God.
And so, these pictures are exactly what you would expect them to be. And frankly, I don't think of them as street photography. And I don't think that the state of Nashville will either. if they have this new law. I think they're going to, it's just not appropriate. I don't know. I don't see that. I will tell you something else that happened. We have a member who is enormously talented, and he got it in his mind that he wanted to do what I call, well, what definitely were still lifes, but they were outside and they did have like people's legs in them, or I mean, there was always some kind of human element in it. But the bottom line was it was a still life. And I don't consider still lifes street photography. I don't care if there's people in the background or not. So we can all, we can spend some amount of time talking about that problem.
It's interesting going back to the portrait street photography, because one of the websites like Life Framer or Lens Culture is having a competition, you know, or entrance to competitions or entries for portraiture. And I have street photography that I've done that are essentially portraits. And I've wondered if it's valid for me to submit some of those. And based upon what you were saying, I guess it is, because it's still a portrait, even though it was candid. I did not pose the person, but it's still a portrait.
Absolutely. And in fact, one of the I would call trends in street portraiture is an increasing desire to make it look more candid and to include the environment. Street portraits often are, for street photographers, are called environmental portraits. They are not always environmental portraits, but portraiture portraits are trying to move toward environmental portraits also. So I think you should absolutely submit those. I don't think there's going to be any problem. Okay, good. You just gave me the inspiration to do that tomorrow. So that's great. Thanks. Lens Culture has some wonderful opportunities. Yeah. Yeah.
Another question. Go ahead.
No, I'm done.
I suppose that one of the more famous ones is the bicycle rider that Brashan shot, where he sat and looked down on the till the guy came along riding the bicycle. You're familiar with what I'm talking about?
You're talking about Carter Bresson?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
The bicycle. What is that? Is that a portrait? Is that a street photo? What exactly? What is, or is it a still life?
Tell you what it is, John. It's a beautiful photo.
And it would be a street photography. I mean, he's catching motion. And it has the architecture thing going with it too, because of where the bike is placed with the railing as it goes down. It takes your eye all the way to the guy speeding through it. But it wouldn't be a portraiture because you really can't see the guy's face.
Right.
So some of them are very difficult to classify.
Yes, to me, portraiture is more where the focus is closer on the face, or not even necessarily close, but the main purpose of the photo is focusing on the face of the person.
And if I can remember correctly, the other one is this guy jumping a mud puddle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah. What is it?
That's street
photography.
Straight up.
They describe his work as completely candid street photography.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately are the Gestalt principles of visual perception. And I've been writing blogs pretty hard on it. And the other day I looked through his Henri Cartier-Bresson's pictures. That man used the Gestalt principles of visual perception in no uncertain terms.
All right.
Street portraiture, as far as Cartier-Bresson, there's a picture in Mexico of two prostitutes looking through the wooden frames of doors that, he happened to walk upon and get a picture of them. So and I think one of them is facing him and the other woman is kind of turned to a profile. That would be a street portraiture right there.
It would be.
It also sounds like the beginning of a joke, like two prostitutes, a priest and a rabbi were looking through a window, So.
I I think there's a new type of street photography. I actually am getting ready to write about that. And it's what I call anonymous street photography, because, for example, in EU, they are increasingly moving toward restricting your ability to take pictures of people you do not know. And a way to get around that is for it to be anonymous street photography. That can be done by a shadow on the face, some object in front of the face. But there also is increasingly decapitated street photography, where you have street photography with at least some of the people in the picture with their heads cut off. Mm. Now, this is kind of an acquired taste, I have to tell you, but I'm acquiring it.
It's a shame, because it's just restricting an art form.
Is that in France? That would be guillotine.
There you go. There you are. But for example, that's when geometric street photography and abstract street photography can move in. And that solves your problem of taking street photography and having something that can go in the Frist book. If the person is not identifiable, the Frist isn't going to care. So there's some reason to take that kind of photograph.
Or you could go into Photoshop and put Bernie's head on them.
There you go. Adding, absolutely.
I see that it is about 8, and I'm sorry, but my iPad's about out of juice here. So I'm going to have to quit the recording, but I don't want to just quit it in the middle. Any final last thoughts or words? Diane?
No, thank you, Diane. That was great.
Thanks, I appreciate it. So you'll get in touch with me and we'll get you in there.
Yeah, I'll mail you probably tonight while I'm thinking of it.
Fantastic. All right.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.